I really was looking at a win-win scenario. I became addicted to the win-win scenario. The idea that you can do something and there is no downside. Those curly fluorescent light bulbs that have mercury in them, that's unfortunate because that's kind of a downside to those. Making fuel that makes not alternative fuels that cause food prices to rise, that's the end of an unfortunate byproduct of that. In our case, we were looking for just only something we could do that was a win that would eliminate any of the negatives. Are you still there, by the way?
Yeah, we're still
logged
here.
in? I hit a button.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so we started comparing what we were doing to the demolition companies. The demolition companies would hire one worker. We would hire 25 people. We needed 25 people to do what they could do with one person. Like they could smash a building down, and it took us quite a few people to do it as fast as they would have, if you want to put it that way. That's a win. That's jobs. We were helping the environment. Every building we touched, we're saving 75 to 95% from the landfill. And that's not even including concrete, which would make it 99% probably. We are helping low-income homeowners. Right off the bat, somebody comes in, they said they had a fire in their house and they didn't have enough insurance to rebuild, and we were their only solution. We were the only thing in the community that allowed them to rebuild their house. And that's a win for the community, especially for low-income homeowners that somehow can own a home, but they can't afford to maintain a home. Ex-offenders, I really have recently, last couple of years, I've really embraced the idea that when someone is released from prison and they say, or they are on the track of turning their life around, trying to get a job, I wish there was a job waiting for them when they get out, so that they can, if they are on track, that they can stay on track. So the great thing about deconstructing, let's say, a vacant and abandoned property is there aren't a lot of people concerned about whether you're an ex-offender if you're working in a vacant and abandoned building. So it offers them career options and work. A lot of times the work is in the neighborhood that they live in. It's actually in the inner city, where there aren't that many jobs being created. So these are all wins that we try to enable in each project and avoid any of the downsides. Next slide. So that blue building in that picture, that is a building that was about to be demolished. And the question is, should it have been demolished or should it have been deconstructed? Or, well, you could say, well, we want to reuse everything we possibly can. So, yeah, we definitely want to deconstruct that house and reuse as much of it as we can. But frankly, the reality of the situation is that there are over 300,000 buildings demolished or removed every year in the United States. And we don't have, our industry does not have the capacity today to take on 300,000 buildings a year. If we did, we would create, tens and tens of thousands of jobs. I want to say hundreds of thousands of jobs that we would need to tackle some of these buildings. But frankly, some of these buildings are unsafe, and they have mold, or they were a meth lab, or they had arson damage, or whatever, and that's why they're coming down to begin with. So I think the lesson from this slide is that some buildings should be demolished because they're unsafe and damaged. Some buildings should be deconstructed because they're easy to deconstruct and they have a lot of value. There's a lot of buildings in between those two extremes, and we need to know what we should do for each building. Each situation is different. We want to reuse as much as we can, and we need to visit as many job sites as we can to do that. So we need to make sure we're not spinning our wheels on items that will not be reused. Next slide. Now, we collect materials in lots of different ways in our industry. We just go pick up material. salvage them, where we go in, let's say you're going to remodel your kitchen. We'll come and pull your old cabinet set out and make sure that it gets reused before you put in the new one. We deconstruct, where we disassemble, we systematically disassemble buildings from top to bottom and save as many parts as we can for reuse. While we're there, we're going to recycle as much as we possibly can, but we're going to look at reuse first. Manufacturing place, someone that manufactures doors or windows, they have a little scratch or dent in them, we're going to accept those to make sure that they have a market for that so they don't end up throwing those out. People donate things that they have around their house that they decide they can't use. All of these are examples of ways that we collect material. Next slide. Now, one of the things that you might question, or that we question, about whether we should save it or whether it should be recycled or somehow responsibly disposed of. An example would be items that contain asbestos. Do we really want to see those reused? Probably not. In fact, we definitely don't. If it's an old refrigerator that's wasting energy, is that really something that should be reused? A toilet that takes 5 gallons of water to flush it, is that something that should be reused? Now, there are certain items that should not be reused. I just told my class that when you tear the wiring out of the house, you should not reuse that. That is a serious liability. That is something that is damaged and should not be allowed to be reused because it could cause a fire. So not everything can be reused, and we are aware of that. And we can't get to every job, so we're aware of that. So we are trying to make good decisions on what we reuse and keep those downsides to a minimum. Next slide. Now, the retailing of materials, that is, it isn't, it's just like a lot of reuse businesses. We have to find a way to collect the material, and we have to find a way to sell the material. So some of us, the students that I'm teaching today, I'm saying you don't all need to run a store. You could wholesale the material to somebody who does run a store. You could have your own store. You could sell things from the job site if you feel like that actually works for you. And you could go to Craigslist and so on. So there are a lot of alternative ways that we can get this done, because we really need to add thousands of jobs around the country, people doing this, because so many things are being wasted today. We feel like really that we're only saving about 1% for reuse of buildings, and that's not a confirmed number, but it's a feeling that we have. Next slide. Now, this is about the green-collar jobs. That's been a big push in our industry. There's been some government money thrown our direction where they're saying, let's see, maybe we can help the environment and create jobs simultaneously. That sounds like a good thing to support. So we've had some training programs like the one I'm doing right now, where you're seeing that kind of support and that money being thrown at that, and we're hoping to use that money responsibly and get as many people involved in the industry as we can, in the reuse industry. So the fact is that what we do is pretty diverse, pretty complicated. Running an operation with 40 people, I would say that was stressful. But we had people pulling nails. We had people, operating machines. We had people sweeping floors. We had people running the cash register. The thing about the reuse of these materials, it takes a lot of infrastructure to make it happen. We can't just have a little shop. We're talking about items like tub showers and 40-foot long beams and things like that. We had I think we had 5,500 doors in stock in our stores, just for starters. And what that means is we need a variety of people, and they're doing a variety of tasks. We're running 2 businesses simultaneously. We're running a demolition company, you might say, and we're running a retail outlet, and we're doing it at the same time. These people, these trainees, are looking at this from, they could get trained in this, maybe be part of the industry, and maybe move on to construction, service industry, retail, marketing, management, or manufacturing jobs. Use us as a sort of a springboard to get there.